Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Skylila Experience podcast. Today we have Nikki Cassa coming on from Gold Coast, Australia. Hey, Nikki.
Hello, good morning for me. Good
Good morning
afternoon
for
for
you.
you.
Yes, good evening for me. So, Nikki is the founder of the Conscious Coaching Academy and a mind body practitioner. What I wanted to get into today with Nikki is her whole story from where she was to who she is now and what she practices. And why I'm so excited for this conversation is because when I met Nikki in Sydney, Australia in 2018, we were both working as personal trainers at Fitness First, which is a gym in Australia. Well, it's here in the UK as well. And why I'm so excited is because when I met you, you have always been this inspiring, disciplined, focused individual. But from who I know you as today, from your perspective, in 2018, you were perhaps not in the best place, which is so interesting to see from an outside perspective because it looks like you were and you're just thriving, so fit, so active, so disciplined. It was like, this girl, oh my gosh, I remember just being so amazed by you and impressed in everything that you did and the confidence. So I'd love to hear from you, obviously, what what transformed you? What came to mind all those years ago when you were like, never mind, this is not who I am or who I want to be? And what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, so you know, when I was working at Fitness First with uh alongside with you,
Hmm.
I think you saw a very well put together, high functioning
Hmm.
woman who was dealing with a lot of dysfunctions deep down. And I got really, really good at using work, success, and achievements to numb and hide and suppress that like inner void that I was feeling.
Hmm.
And I didn't know that I was suppressing it. I was just trying to seek it outside of me because I didn't know where true happiness, fulfillment, and self-love like really comes from.
Hmm.
So, I grew up in Adelaide, and the fitness industry in Adelaide is like, at least 5 years ago, it was very far behind, and they didn't really have very good fitness shows. I competed as a bodybuilder there, and the competition was quite subpar, so to speak. I won this competition where I got the first place in the overall, the first place in the under 21s, the first place in the open category. And I was the only one in the open category. So, like, you
Be
go in to do a bodybuilding competition with other people, and there's like no one else in your category. So, I kind of looked at the industry in Adelaide and went, I want to compete. I want to be the best. And that I talk about intangibles and tangible skills with some of the business owners I work with in my coaching space. And like, intangible skills can't be taught. These are innate qualities you're born with. And I've always been a really hard worker and always sought out to be the best in everything that I've done my whole life, like, no matter what it was. And so I was just built to like seek really difficult things. And Adelaide just wasn't it.
right.
So I packed up my little bag, and I actually went to Sydney to Fitness First, and I said to them, look, I want to move here, and I've come in today to tell you, if you've got 10 applications on that like table, choose me and I'll show you. Like, let me prove it to you. And
Wow.
he shook my hand and gave me the job on the spot. And I was like, oh, I was just here for the job interview, but okay. So I
Amazing.
got the job straight away, and I moved up the week later. And I felt like I had something to prove to myself.
Mm.
But I also had a lot to prove to my dad.
Mm.
And it came from, I would say that although it came from a beautiful place of trying to make him proud, it also then started to come from a place that was really unhealthy, Sky, because without my dad's approval, like I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel worthy. I felt that I was a failure and inadequate. And so I went to Sydney and I was like, I'll show you, Dad, that I can follow my dreams. And not everything is about working for the family business and working it really hard and making lots of money.
Mm-hmm.
And like six months later, I found myself working 3 jobs. So you probably don't know this, but I was doing personal training and I was doing sales calls for Hattie Boydell, who is world champion of a bodybuilding federation. And then I was also doing a side hustle on the weekend, which was I was teaching other women how to do the bodybuilding posing because I grew up as a dance teacher and dancing. So like I don't know where I had a second to breathe. And on top of that, I was competing to get on stage myself.
I remember that's why I had just moved there thinking, oh my God, this woman is inspiring, but just another creature almost of the high functioning that you were operating at was just incomprehensible. I mean, obviously I get it, but that's why I was so impressed by you, and that's why I'm so fascinated to see how you've transitioned to still have that as a core, but in yet sharing it in the most beautiful light sense. I'll let you continue though.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, from the outside, I think there's a lot of people that we can look at and feel really inspired by.
Mhm,
And we can take so much from people and learn things from them. But I
mhm,
think that people learn that like success comes down to, like, for example, you just got to work really, really hard. And a lot of what made me successful, even especially getting out of the fitness industry and doing what I do now as a practitioner and working with women's like consciousness and nervous systems, it's completely different to working with women's bodies, is like there've been key things that I've done along the way that have like really been key indicators of my growth and success.
mhm,
And success looks and means something different for everyone.
mhm,
Like for me, what I feel is personal success for me is that I can wake up every day and who I am when no one's looking and how I feel about myself when no one's looking
mhm,
is a direct mirror of how other people see me. And when I was a bodybuilder, how I saw myself was like a fraud and unworthy and a failure and like always feeling like I was second place.
mhm,
And yet people thought I was like a pro, like, well, I was a pro because I had a pro status, but everyone thought I was like this amazing person and inspiring. And that's where I call it imposter gap. It's
yes.
like who I felt about myself and who I was actually being day to day was completely different to how other people saw me. And so
Mm,
that wasn't really for me like a true definition of success because everyone else was really defining myself. Everyone else was clapping for me and I was going home like crying, feeling so unworthy and inadequate.
mhm,
So it's not enough to just work really, really hard because I worked hard my whole life. And yet I can tell you right now, like back when I was a personal trainer, that there was a lot of external motivating factors. And it
mhm,
wasn't really coming from my true purpose. It
mhm.
wasn't coming from what truly inspires me. I was just worrying what everyone else thought of me.
It almost makes you feel even worse in a sense when everyone else is you're hearing all of these, say, people clapping and applauding for you, and then you thinking, well, I should be happy because they're happy, and but something's just not right. So I'm curious because I know right now you work with a lot of women's shadows and you go deep into, their mind body connection, as you've mentioned. What, obviously you've done this for yourself. What was it that you went, okay, I need to work on my shadow self, or what was the process that you did when you stepped into that space of recognizing, okay, there's so much to work here? What did that look like?
So I have this mentor that I worked with a long time ago, and before he became my mentor, we were friends.
Mhm,
And we met each other in Adelaide, and he ended up moving here to the Gold Coast. So whenever I would come here to the Gold Coast for my bodybuilding shows, which was where the federation holds like the big shows at the casino, we would catch up and just talk about like life and business and all sorts of things. And I was telling him how I was feeling depressed, so to speak. And I was binge eating. I have had body dysmorphia, which is like I was 10% body fat, Sky, which is like
Wow.
insane. But
Wow.
I would look in the mirror and be like, I look fat. It
As,
was insane,
just because
insane.
I'll just mention as a female, 10% is exceptionally low. Like a low kind of athlete is even around 12 to 16%. Just wanted to say that so people really recognize how low that is. Wow.
Yeah, and like my metabolism was horrible. Like I wasn't, this might be a little bit of TMI. I'll say it in a nice way. I wasn't having like proper bowel movement.
Yeah.
Um, so like I was having to get colonic cleansers because like that's how disrupted my gut was.
Right.
Not to mention my hormones, my sleep, my stress. Like it was so unhealthy. And when because I was eating just like rice and chicken, like essentially I was malnourished.
Right.
Like yeah, it's hard to kind of explain the depth of how dark of a place like I was in. And I wasn't maintaining like optimal performance because, again, my sleep, my gut, all of these things were really disrupted. But for me, it didn't matter because no one sees that on stage.
Mm,
You don't get scored for how healthy you look or are. You
right.
just get scored for how good you look and how lean and muscular you are. So, like, I didn't really care about those things because I was so obsessed with just winning.
Right.
So,
Interesting.
I'm having this chat with my friend at the time, and he's like, "Look, I think we should like go away for the weekend, and like you need like a break. You sound like you're gonna burn out. You sound like you're gonna have a like mental health breakdown. Like you need some time away from your work, your job, like to just rest."
Hmm.
And so we did that, and over the weekend we started really diving deep into like what's going on for you. And we were talking for about like this is like 6 hours into this conversation, and I could feel there were like these things that he was like poking, and I was like, oh, this doesn't feel good. Like, why are you asking me these questions? And how do you feel about yourself? And why do you think that? And I felt like he was doing surgery on my mind. It's the only way I can describe it.
Interesting.
And he asked me this one question, this guy, and it was if I was in this like dark room and someone came and turned the lights on. And the question was, who are you? And like no one had ever asked me that question before.
Such a good question. So simple as that.
I said to him that I'm a bodybuilder, I'm pro, like coach. He's like, no, 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 no. Like those aren't those are not who you are. Like those are just things you do.
Hmm.
Who are you, Nikki? And I was like, huh.
Uh-oh, here we
Like,
go.
so if I'm not a bodybuilder and I'm not a bikini pro and I'm not a PT and a coach, I looked at him, I was like, what do you mean? Like, who are you? He like started telling me all these things and he's like, stop deflecting. Who are you? And I looked at him and I was like, I don't know. And he looks at me dead straight in the face and goes, can you see how that might be a problem?
Wow. I just
And
felt
like, whole world shattered.
that. Yeah. Wow.
And he
But
was so smart going to Sydney. I had it all figured out. Like, I didn't even know who the fuck I was.
yeah. Amazing how that at that moment it might have felt like, well, you just said my whole world shattered, yet I don't know if I made it up or I heard it or whatever it was, channeled it, I don't know, but it was for where our wounds are open, that's what allows the light to shine through. So it's like that was where the phoenix then you completely just burned to ashes and rose from yourself. Okay.
Yeah, it's actually a beautiful roomie. quote, the wound is where the light enters.
Yes, yes, it
Yeah,
is.
so I had to look at what I was not wanting to see, was
Mhm.
that I thought I knew who I was. I was trying to show everyone a version of myself that I thought I should be.
Mhm.
And it's not who I actually was or who I really wanted to be. These were just like, I would call them hobbies or passions or aspirations. And outside of that, because I didn't really have a foundation for who I was just like doing things that weren't really connected to my values. They weren't really connected to my heart. They weren't really connected to my true north.
Mhm.
And once I figured that out, at first got fucking clear on like, who am I?
Mhm.
Then I was like, okay, well, like, what do I value? What's really important to me? What are my core beliefs, my principles, what I want to stand for? And that's when I realized it's like being a PT doesn't represent any of that anymore for me, and especially the bodybuilding. And this is not to like throw shade on bodybuilding, because all of the things I developed through bodybuilding, the depression, the body dysmorphia, the binge eating, the perfectionism, all of that was because I had a predisposition of childhood trauma. So it
Mm.
wasn't really that bodybuilding created those problems. It was that bodybuilding triggered what was already there within me and
Mhm.
actually gave me a space to look at it. So like, thank you, bodybuilding. It was like actually the best thing that happened to me.
Incredible.
But then I just realized I was like, nah, bodybuilding's just not aligned with my values anymore.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being so open and vulnerable. And that's what I appreciate about you, is because we can dive into all of this because you've already dove into it and I know you already share it with everyone. What did the practice look like for you then? And is it still the same now, your personal development practice or shedding light on your shadow? What does that practice actually look like? And I know you do that with your clients now. Is there a difference between what you did for yourself and what you do with your clients?
So a lot of what I teach my clients has all been through my own personal development,
Mhm.
because there's a difference between knowledge and experience, and you can get wisdom from both. Like one can read a book that's full of knowledge, and there will be a kind of wisdom that comes through from that.
Mhm.
For example, like I'm reading a book at the moment called The Map of Consciousness by David Hawkins.
Mm.
And there's so many things about that connect to a lot of the Buddhism that I've learned over the past few years.
Mm.
And like knowledge is such an incredibly powerful thing to have. But like wisdom that comes from experience is just like tenfold the amount of times better. Like for example, I've read a lot of text on Buddhism, and I understand, okay, to be happy, we need to let go of our cravings. To be happy, we need to stop clinging to things outside of us to make us happy. To be happy, we need to learn how to quieten our mind and sit in meditation. I know. Like you understand the knowledge of that, but the actual practice of experiencing that in your body and experiencing it in your life is completely different.
Mhm.
And so, like last year, I went to Indonesia and went up to West Java, and I was like, I'm going to put into practice everything I've been learning about Buddhism and meditation that I'm yet to experience in my body. And I did what's called a Vipassana retreat, which is 10 days of noble silence, no
Mhm.
talking, no eye contact. And every day you meditate. And the meditation starts at 4:30 a.m. in the morning, and you don't go to bed till 9:30. So it's 10 hours of meditation every
Mm.
single day for 10 days. So like if you really want to know what it's like to meditate like a monk, it's not found in a book, it's found through experience. And there's so much that I can then teach my clients through my own experiences.
Mm.
Through, for example, knowing what it feels like to have imposter syndrome, depression, anxiety, like all of those things, like working through my childhood trauma, my sexual trauma.
Mm.
And so when clients come through to me, I'm not just throwing psychology at them, like psychology models, and they feel like they're, in a psychology session and they're just like with a clinical psychologist who's like, how do you feel? And it's like, I feel like shit, like help. I'm able to say to them, it's like, I know how you feel. Yeah, that must be really hard. So there's so much, I guess that on many different levels through what I've learned, what I've experienced, what I practice, that I teach my clients.
Thank you for sharing that. I completely agree. And I love that you know, what you've said in the past few minutes of just thank you, say thank you to bodybuilding, because I say the same when something unfortunate happens. I'll sit with it and I'll process it. And yes, I try to sit in that discomfort, but then I also almost devil's advocate the okay, this sucks, but my future self will be grateful for this and I'll be able to help other people, and that back and forth between it where sometimes it sounds really bizarre. I'll say I'm grateful for my cousin passing, and it sounds so almost messed up to somebody who doesn't know that. And I'm like, but yes, but in a weird way, that's what helps us grow and helps us connect and share. So I love just how you've spoken about everything that you've been through. So thank you for that perspective. I just want to ask, what what does that day-to-day practice look like for you now? Say, because I know this morning you've already done your reading. I think we started at 6:30 a.m. for you. What does your time look like in order to, how do you refuel your bucket before you give to everyone else?
Yeah, I love talking about this. Um, so, excuse me, before I talked about how we can have tangibles and intangibles of, we can use the word success, you can use it, tangibles or intangibles of a CEO or entrepreneur, whatever kind of resonates for your listeners. And we got to remember there's like two things here. The intangibles are the things that can't be taught, and the tangibles are the skills that can be taught.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important that if you are wanting to succeed in any endeavor that you do, whether you want to run your own business or not, even if you just want to excel in your career and your industry and maybe get promoted and climb, you know, your industry ladder and get really, really successful in that way, you need to transcend yourself. Because like if you're listening, I would encourage you to write this down or like put it in your notes. Your current level of thinking has created the same problems that you're trying to get away from right now. And your current level of choices are the ones that have created your current reality.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for you to create a new reality, like you need to do something completely different. You either have to create new choices, or you need to start thinking and feeling in a different way as well. And I think sometimes a lot of people just start with the choice level. They're like, okay, I am going to go into 2024 and I'm going to get up early, go to the gym, start tracking my food. I am going to make more money in my business. I'm going to start a podcast. And it's like, have you addressed any intangibles that actually come with that? Like, for example, how are you going to start a podcast if you don't even see yourself as an authority?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to wake up every day and you're going to go to sit down to do that episode, and that inner voice is going to be like, you can't do this, you're not an authority. And you're probably going to avoid it, or statistics show that people get to like episode 12 and then they quit, because every episode that inner voice is subconsciously going to say you're not an authority, you don't deserve this. So a lot of people are like just working at the behavior level and not looking at like, what are the intangible skills, what are the innate qualities that we see in these people that I need to start working on developing myself. So for me, like Sky, like one of the intangibles that I have is, hard work. I mentioned that already. One of the other ones is that I have devotion. And I think like commitment and devotion are very different.
Mm-hmm.
Devotion for me is that I am wholeheartedly connected to my integrity. So if I'm going to do something, like I will do whatever it takes to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So like this is where we can start to look at like the innate qualities. Another one is So it's not enough to be a podcast host and be good at communicating. Like you kind of need charisma. You need to like let your personality shine through. So again, like these are things that can't be taught. You need to develop those things within yourself.
Mm.
And a lot of people aren't like looking at those intangibles, sorry, of like, who do I need to be to transcend my current self in order to be the person I really want? Because when I was a bodybuilder, like I didn't see myself as an authority. I didn't see myself as somebody who was like actually inspiring.
Mhm.
I didn't see myself who had like true devotion. I was just like obsessed with winning.
Mhm.
So I had to ask myself, I was like, you don't know who you are. Cool, figure that out first. And then like, who do you need to be?
Yeah,
Like, who do you want to be? I'm inspired by people like Oprah and Tony Robbins
me too.
and Lakiani, like all of these like leaders. Like, who are they? It's
Yeah.
not what they do.
Mhm.
Not
The
what they do. It's who they are.
what they show
So
up.
yeah. So every morning I sit down and I have what's called prime time. And so I prime myself in the morning and that sets me up for the day. It's like win the morning, win the day. So we have the intangibles. And the way that you develop those things is by doing identity statements.
Mm.
You know how, like, have you ever tried to stand in front of the mirror and you're like, I am the best? And you're like, ugh.
Yeah, it
Like,
actually,
you're,
yeah, no, I sorry to interrupt. I tell people all the time because it's such a bizarre thing. Or I said I told myself I was beautiful for like 4 years until finally one day I believed it, and I felt that difference where I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I now that I believe it, I realized just how much I didn't believe it before, which was such a bizarre thing because everyone, always is like, oh, you're so beautiful. I'm like, thanks, thanks. But then one day it clicked and I was like, oh, I truly feel it now. So
yeah,
yes.
that's,
Mhm.
and for anyone listening, like, here's a hack. Instead of doing the I am good enough, I am an entrepreneur, I'm a CEO, and then a part of you is like, no, you're not. You don't even have your own business. And there's like too much evidence to support that you're not that thing because your subconscious is going to say that, no, you're not. And that's why it's not going to feel good. It's going to feel like an uphill battle where you're pushing this really heavy boulder uphill. So what you can do is this little hack I love to teach my clients is we can use what's called evidence-based identity statements.
Mm.
So instead of saying, I am an authority, we say, where in my life am I an authority?
Mm.
Sorry, something just fell down. Where
Okay.
in my life am I an authority? And we can use why statements. Why am I an authority?
Mhm.
And so now all of a sudden, instead of you looking for evidence why you're not that thing, you're actually looking for evidence to support that you are. So if I said to Sky, like, why are you beautiful? It
Mhm.
might challenge her to be like, whoa, like it's hard to answer that question because I don't see myself in that light. But when I really, really think of it, like I'm beautiful because I'm this incredible heart-centered person and I'm compassionate and I love people and I care about life and I'm artistic and I'm creative and those things make me really beautiful. And so all of a sudden now you're like, whoa, I am beautiful, rather than it just being this one statement, I am beautiful, and then your subconscious is like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
So starting your morning with that is like so potent because now you're actually going into the day with the embodiment. Like you're experiencing that in your body.
Mhm.
Like your shoulders are back, your chest is up. You're like, you want to cry because you're like, oh my gosh, like that's who I am. And if you're already being that thing, imagine how you would act, how
Mhm.
you would feel, your thoughts,
Mhm.
your decisions. If you were already being that, imagine how all of that would actually change as a direct reflection for how you see yourself.
Mhm.
So that is like gold. And then, of course, I do my morning meditation. I'm super into biohacking at the moment, which is essentially like small little ways you can improve um, your your physiology, but I like to think of it as like your um, supplements for your mind.
Mm.
So I've got red
Like
light
train
therapy,
your mind.
mm,
Clarify,
supple-
right? Is
supplements for your mind.
that what you mean? You mean your consciousness, not your brain?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so I really love that. But then obviously like the physiological sides of it is really helpful as well. So like for example, a lot of people wouldn't look at the quality of the water that they're drinking. And so they're drinking like a lot of fluoride, which is calcifies the pineal gland, which is like an essential part of your brain if you want to transcend yourself and evolve in your levels of consciousness. So it's like little things like that that do make a difference long term. But priming yourself in the morning, like start with your meditation. Maybe it's journaling. I do sit down and do an hour of reading. And I don't read to just read a book, like I study. So I take notes, and then I test my memory recall. If you're interested in learning more about memory recall, I would highly recommend getting onto Jim Quick, JIMKWIK. He taught me how to speed read and how to retain what I'm reading. So I used to like go through books and then I'd be like, what did I just read to like test myself? And I'd like, fuck, like I can't even remember what I read through this book. And I was like, this is a problem because I'm spending so much time reading and I'm only getting key things, like 10% of the book I can remember. And like I want to be able to remember more than just like 10% of a book, especially if it's like a really thick one. So I started doing these hacks from Jim Quick, and I realized I'm reading much faster. So what would take me 2 months to read, I'm reading in like 3 weeks.
Wow.
And I'm not just reading fast, but I'm actually remembering what I'm reading. So that was like a game changer for me because those were the tangible skills. Like now I'm learning things about psychology, I'm learning about neuroscience, quantum physics, psychoneuroimmunology, spirituality, neuroplasticity. Like all of these things are like, especially what I teach as a personal development coach, weren't just helping me, but they were then helping a lot of what I teach my clients. And then from there, I wait an hour before I have my first cup of coffee. So I'm having my cup of coffee with you now because it's 6:30. I got up at 5. And I do that to delay my onset of dopamine. We live in a society at the moment, Sky, where everyone is actually dopamine deprived, which is why we're addicted to scrolling because it gives us that dopamine hit. And some of your audience might be listening and they might know people, or maybe there's someone who is addicted to like other forms of extreme dopamine, like drugs, alcohol. And it's kind of a problem because if you were to get those people to spend a week on their own, like they would really struggle with knowing how to regulate their nervous system because they've been so dependent on getting dopamine outside of them. So I actually purposely delay my dopamine. Number one, it teaches me how to have discipline when I don't feel like doing things. So like reading a book on the levels of consciousness is difficult to do when you don't have caffeine. So it's like, what a beautiful opportunity for me to train myself to still do it when I don't feel like it and train my brain to get really good at concentrating and not needing caffeine to do it. And then the second is, sorry, oh, you jumped
I
in
just
the
want to
second.
get I just want to like recognize how you call it. It's not even my coffee, you call it my dopamine, which is a nice awareness of really what it is. Sorry, continue. I just thought that was really significant. So your second.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And the second part is that you actually get a higher dose of dopamine and you get less of a crash at the end. So the spike, if anyone's watching this video, I don't know if you're going to post a video, but the spike goes up here compared to, let's say, if you had it first thing in the morning. And then instead of crashing and getting that coffee crash, the curve goes from here to here.
Mm.
So I think Andrew Huberman talks about this. So it's epic. It's like you're getting way more benefits from your caffeine, your dopamine, than just to have that quick fix in the morning because you need it. And this is where I really looked at optimizing my performance as a high performer in my life and in my business. But then looking at like self-mastery, like everyone, no matter what you do for work, should be working towards self-mastery.
Mm.
Otherwise, like you can't really blame anything else but yourself for not feeling like you have energy and happiness. It's like, but do you do things, for example, to take care of yourself and working towards self-mastery? It might not look as extreme as what I do, but it's like, what is something you can do to work towards self-mastery in your life?
Mhm. Yeah, it's beautiful. Can I ask though, because I know for a lot of people, I think the caffeine they can manage, but it's a lot about the ritual of waking up and having a warm cup of something. Will you have some warm lemon water or something, or just strictly wake up, maybe water and read, or have you substituted? What does that look like?
I have a little like supplement bar. um, but I've got this water that it's if anyone's in Australia or Gold Coast, and I get it imported from this company called High Vibe. I'm gonna get real woo-woo here, so just bear with me. Some of
Oh,
you might
don't
be like,
worry, I'm all woo-woo. We had a big, long conversation last week about all this woo-woo stuff.
amazing. But the water, they actually attune to the frequency of love. So they infuse it with vibrational frequencies. And when studies show, like science shows that the molecular structure of water changes when you play high frequency music to it. So you can get a droplet of water, play high frequency music to it and freeze it. And sort of like an ice, what's that called? An ice,
A
ice,
not a, oh, what's it
ice.
called? Like a crystal structure. It's not a snowflake. I know there was a testing.
Snowflake.
Like, why can't I?
Snowflake. Let's just say snowflake for now. So imagine like a snowflake in a water droplet, but what makes a snowflake is a snowflake is the geometric symmetry of it. You know, there's 8 points, it's all equal and even. And so when we look at it, the water now turns into like this geometrical shape and it changes the molecular structure of the water. So it's not really woo-woo, it's actually quite science-based, which is beautiful. But sometimes when you hear it, it can sound a bit woo-woo without knowing the science behind
Oh,
it.
woo stuff really is science based. It's like even quantum physics, all of it's theory, anyways. But
Mhm.
theory to a point, yeah. Okay. So you have the.
And then they obviously like filter the water, but then they put back minerals into the water too, so it's not fully stripped from all its good minerals. But then I put a pinch of Celtic salt into the water, and what that does is it increases the absorption level of your water. So a lot of people might be drinking a lot of water, but they might not feel like they're getting the benefits of hydration. So if your body is not fully hydrated, which is pretty much made up of mostly water, but particularly your brain, because your brain takes a third of your body's energy, then you're going to start to notice like brain fog, mental fatigue. And so it might be an indication that if you're drinking a lot of water, but you feel you're dehydrated, adding a bit of Celtic salt can increase the absorption level so that your body is actually absorbing it properly. If you're using a lot of table salt or white salt, it's not going to give you the same mineralization effects, which is why like people preach Himalayan salt. Or here in Australia, we have this river called the Murray River. And so I source my salt from the Murray River. And again, it's just like high pristine quality salt, which is great and really, really good for your body, as opposed to that white table salt. It's not really doing anything except taste.
Don't worry, I had a dream the other week, so I've just moved to the UK and I sent my water bottle in my dream. I sent my water bottle back to Canada, because at home my mom will like literally gather spring water from the springs. She'll go and get jugs and bring it home. So I sent my water bottle back in my dream because I was like, the water is not the same here. Like, I just feel I can feel it. I'm like, can you guys fill up my water bottle, please, and send it back? And I thought, wow, my subconscious is even thinking about this.
Love that. I want
Amazing.
to show you this thing I have in the morning. And I don't know, are you recording this for like YouTube at all?
Yes, yeah. So you can still show it. I've posted one YouTube so far, but Just the editing is a bit, we're getting there. I'd like to cut
Cool.
it, but show it, go ahead and show.
So like I think my screen might be mirrored, so you might just have to like look at it backwards. But I have this morning routine that I do printed out for anyone who's just listening in. I have a schedule that I follow from 5 a.m. till 8 p.m. when I go to bed. And so it has everything that I do in the morning, so that if I'm getting up and I'm having a really challenging, difficult day and I feel sluggish, like I come to, it's called my daily commitment to self. And I read out that at the top, my identity statement, so who I am. And then 5 a.m. meditation, 5:15, my affirmations and beliefs. And from there, it tells me what I need to do to prime myself in the morning. So like I would highly recommend for everyone listening is like create a prime time for yourself in the morning, because the common denominator in every single area of your life, your job, your money, your relationships, your ability to travel, create goals, like the common denominator is you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to have an incredible life, relationships, career, business, happiness, you need to start priming you, transcending you. Think of it, I love to think of it in this analogy, Sky. Imagine if you had $1 million racehorse
Mm-hmm.
and you wanted that racehorse to be the best, like in its race towards happiness, its race towards relationships. Not that it's a race, but let's just stick with the analogy. Like you're going to be like, okay, what can I do to train this horse? All right, we're going to put it under some exercise. We're going to make sure it gets good recovery. Horses actually have red light therapy. They get all sorts of other therapies. They get the best grass-fed, I don't know what you feed horses. No, not grass-fed meat. You don't feed horses meat. They get hay, right? So like
Yes.
the best organic hay. I don't even know if hay is
Not
organic,
eating McDonald's.
right?
Nah.
Like you're going to give it the best, because that horse is $1 million horse. Like you're going to get a return of an investment by investing time, energy, and money into that horse. And so a lot of people don't see themselves in the same way. It's like if you woke up tomorrow and you no longer had all the knowledge, your mind, like you would be screwed. Like you'd have to start again. But if I woke up tomorrow and I broke my leg, I'd be fine. Like even if I was a PT, I just go in with my crutches and my leg in a cast. I don't really need the body to be the main focus of my priming, even if I'm just a personal trainer or a business owner or a podcast host or a CEO or a director or a founder. Like, but my mind is essential, because only I can do this job. Only I can show up in my life. So priming your mind is like the most essential part. It's where those intangibles come from, and tangibles. Like you can learn how to be a better communicator by reading books, for example. So it's like treat yourself like $1 million racehorse, because in your life, like you're the hero. You're the most important person. But a lot of people aren't the hero of their journey. They're the victim and they're the villain.
Yeah. Well, I think it's easy to, it's easy to, I think with the society that we're in, it's frowned upon almost when you're so confident, not because your ego is confident, but just out of self-love. It's easier to be sort of accepted when it's like when you play the victim in a weird, way, but it's true where, so I'm hoping to shift that.
But I think you can be both, Sky.
Mm,
Like if you look at, for example, if you look at like superhero movies,
mm,
like we connect to Spider-Man because he was just the neighborhood guy that got bullied at school and like didn't have any friends. Like he was the, what we would say from the beginning, he was the victim.
mm,
But he became a hero because he knew that he could transcend victimhood, that he could be the hero, that he could have his power. And I
mm,
think a lot of people don't see that that's possible for them. So they only think that like being the victim is the way to go. Like that's where I was when I was in the bodybuilding. Is like I really wanted to be a hero, but in everyone else's story.
Right.
I wasn't the hero in my own life. I was just a victim, and poor was I the villain. Whew. I was like sabotaging and being like, why?
Yeah. Funny way to put it. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing all of that, Nikki. I just wanted to ask, so a huge thing about this podcast that I'm most passionate about too is in, success is a formula. And when you read, everyone sort of says the same thing. So what I'm curious about the individuals in my life and people that I'm interviewing is, what is that, besides your morning routine, what does the rest of your routine look like? What are those, like you just showed us, you actually follow a very strict schedule from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep of what it is. So you're already following your formula. What else is included? What is your diet? What does your social life look like? What are all those components and pillars, and how do you balance them?
Mm. Yeah, so there's this really cool thing you can do, which is called Wheel of Life. I love that you've talked about like, your social life, your nutrition, because Wheel of Life, and you can just Google this, by the way, if you're listening. It's essentially just the different areas of your life, and each Wheel of Life will look different. Some have 8 areas, some have 12 areas, like fun, travel. So just pick whatever like resonates for you, and you go in and you score from 0 to 10 where you feel you are on the scale, 10 being the best, 0 being the worst. And you start to see like an accurate representation of like certain areas where you might be on like a 2 or 3. So like finances as well, purpose, purpose, fulfillment, love, relationships. And I noticed that when I used to learn about uh, what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur, there would be people like Elon Musk where I'd be like, yeah, but I don't think that that feels like balance for me. And there's not a lot of like room for feminine energy either.
Mm,
I realized when I was bodybuilding, I was like super, super masculine, and I wanted to be more in tune with my emotions and my feminine energy.
mhm,
So I love the Wheel of Life, and it often helps me to look at these different areas of my life and just reflect like year to year, like where am I right now? Have I maybe been focusing on too much on my business and not enough on like my social life? And this year I've really made an effort to balance these areas and make sure that consistently I'm creating space and time for all of them.
mhm,
So for example, like with social life, you would say someone who's like this strict probably doesn't have a social life. And when I first started growing my business and the Conscious Woman, I really didn't have a social life because all I was learning was really masculine models, and I wasn't getting in tune with my feminine energy. So whenever someone wanted to reach out to catch up, I would say, sorry, I'm working on a really important project right now that requires my attention, so I can't commit to that right now. Like even my response was so masculine.
so masculine. Wow.
And I realized I was like, wow, I don't really have anyone I connect to. And I realized that it came from a sisterhood wound, because
Mm,
I got really hurt by some friends in my past, and some of my best friends abandoned me through this like really traumatic experience, which you probably know about. And so I had this sisterhood wound where I didn't want to get close to people and I didn't want to let them in, because I had this belief system that I can't trust people and people will hurt you and leave you.
mm,
And so I was like, ooh, that's a pretty lonely place to be. Because I know in 10 years' time, like I do want a family, I do want friends, and I want my kids to have friends too. And they're going to model
mhm,
behaviors by what they see, not what their mum tells them to do, right? It's monkey see, monkey do. So if their mum's a introverted, like loner, so to speak, like they're not going to see the value of connection and friendships. So I
mhm,
was like, wow, like this is not who I want to be, right? Always coming back to who am I, who I want to be, what do I value? I value connection. I really do value that. And I realized it was because that belief system from my wound was getting in the way.
mhm,
So I realized, okay, like who are the people that I really do want to spend my time with? And I looked at what do they value? What are the conversations that they have? What do they not talk about? Like, so in terms of gossip or talking bad about other people, it really can be an indication of how they'll probably talk about you as well. So I was like, you know what, like it's okay for me to have that standard for my friends. And like I had a conversation with one of my girlfriends yesterday. She's in Adelaide at the moment, and we did a Zoom call for like 2 hours, and we were talking about things where I kept thinking, damn, we should have recorded this as a podcast, because that's like the level of conversation that we were having. It was so normal that it would be something that would be like highly beneficial for people to listen to, which is like relationships. We were talking about how to find true love and create secure attachments within yourself when you're just learning how to get out of like an avoidant attachment style. Like it felt like a therapy session. It was like that good.
Mm.
And so it's like you can find people like that in your circle that are so interested in the things that you love talking about, and it be normalized. And I think like that's the thing, is like finding spaces where the things you love is normalized, where your friends don't make you feel weird or not normal, or they peer pressure you to do certain things that you don't want to do on the weekend because now all of a sudden you're not fun. It's like, hang on, you might be the funnest person in your circle, but your fun looks completely different to them. So that was something I really like learned. I was like, hang on, like I can choose my tribe. Like I can choose who I let into my space.
Mm. Yeah, it's like I hear the analogy of fish. We test, say, in education systems, we test everyone the same, but it's like testing a fish to climb a tree versus swim. It's just impossible. It's completely different. Where when you say things on the weekend, your type of fun or whatever it might be, I resonate with that because I haven't resonated with the majority of people's types of fun over the years, that my fun is just different. So I think finding kind of the confidence in, actually, you're right, this isn't who I am. And because it took me a long time to go, I knew I didn't really like partying, but it took me like well until, I don't know, maybe the end of university, when I was like, no, 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 I really don't like this. But it just felt uncomfortable to not, because that was what everyone did.
You know,
Yeah.
one thing that's really important there then is environment.
Mhm.
I found that clients who came to me and they're like, Nikki, I just don't have anyone in my life that has the same values. I would say to them, you're in the wrong rooms,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
or you're in the rooms where you're the smartest person.
Yeah, I love that one.
So it's like if you want to be inspired by your friends and have your own friends inspire you, like you need to get in different rooms.
Mm.
And like that can be uncomfortable. Like there have been times where I've gone to events on my own, and like particularly when I first started going to personal development events
Mm.
3, 4 years ago, like I was so nervous. Like I didn't know anyone, like social anxiety. Will people like me? What if I say the wrong thing? And sometimes you do, like you say silly things because you're like nervous, or you're like trying to make conversation. You talk about the weather and you're like, what the fuck? But it
Yeah.
happens. It's the only way you get better. The only way you get better at like just being yourself in crowds and connecting with people who are doing tremendously better than you and not feeling insecure, not feeling intimidated. It's just like practice being yourself in spaces like that. And your normal will change because it'll just be your reality. Like you won't accept anything less when it's like all you spend your time with and the places you're in. So
Mhm.
when I go to personal developments now, like when I would go back in the day, I would just like sit in the back. Now I sit at the front, and whoever I'm sitting next to, I always talk to. I introduce myself. I will go up to the speakers. I will go up to all the crew that are then helping at the event, like volunteering. Because generally, if they're a crew member, they've done all the events. They are probably speaking in their own spaces. They're probably business owners. So like I seek out people that I know are well above and ahead of me, so I can like hear what they talk about and how they talk about things. And it's just it lands different. Like it's a whole different world to be in. So that's one thing like I would really recommend.
Now you lead your own. You lead your own personal development events. So if you're in Australia, go to Nikki's events. They're amazing. They're beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of this, Nikki. One last thing, just before we wrap it up. What is a mantra or a quote that you would share to perhaps your younger self or somebody who hasn't moved into this space yet, but really wants to?
Mm. Ooh, there's like 10 that come to mind.
You can list a few, whatever feels right.
One of the things that started me off in this world was my own personal development. So instead of doing personal development so I could have a better business, I started it to have just a better me, a better life.
Mhm.
But it meant that like I had to really face a lot of my trauma, a lot of my wounding.
Mhm.
And that was like really scary back then. I was like spent so long running away from it. And there was this one thing I used to tell myself, and like it got me through, oof, like it really got me through. I call it the dark night of the soul.
Oh, I like that.
And it's actually it's a model. If you're interested, it's like jump on Google and look more into it, the dark night of the soul. But it was only at the cusp and the precipice do we evolve. And
Mm.
what that means is like when we're really on the edge and right up close, like right up close to the darkness, to the fear. Like when you go up to that cliff and you look down and it's a 1,000-meter drop, like you're gonna feel terrified. Maybe you've got a parachute on and you're like, I have to jump, hoping this parachute will
Mhm.
work. Your mind and your fear will say, I can't. And your soul will say, but you forgot you had wings.
Wow.
There's like at the precipice, right at that edge, like that's where we evolve. That's where we transcend and grow and transform and just like that's where the real
Mm.
beauty is. That's where the treasure and the magic is. And I had to go there. I had to go to the edge and meet the depth of myself every time, my shadows, my trauma, my wounds, and remind myself, okay, it's time to jump. Don't forget, you've got wings. Every time my ego would forget. She's like, no, you can't, it's too scary, you're not good enough, like, all of the fears.
Mm.
And that's what really got me on this journey, was having that belief on the other side of jumping and just like seeing myself catch myself, fly,
Mm.
and oh, like I didn't know that there was a version of myself possible on the other side of that.
Mm.
And then like a second quote that I love is, if it is to be, it's up to me.
Oh, I like that. That's a quick, catchy one.
Like
Yeah.
no one's gonna catch you. Like
Yeah.
you gotta be there to catch yourself. And you have to jump too. Like
Yeah.
it's
I have a similar, I say that similar analogy to myself for everything where you have to jump to be caught. You can't be caught before you jump. It just is not the way it works. So whenever I'm scared to do something new or whatever it might be, it's like, well, nobody's going to catch me because I haven't jumped yet. Like I have to, it's the two parts. That's how it works. So that knowing that those wings though, that is beautiful. Wow, thank you for sharing. Okay. Oh, there's so much more I want to discuss with you. I'm like, this is just leading into the feminine energy, but we'll save that for another time because I know you've got a strict schedule to follow for today. Also think, which is one thing that I find so valuable too, is with structure gives freedom, right? I think that structure to one's life gives them the space, say, for you to go do this 10-day retreat of silence and meditation and those routines. Um, so where can I'll share information for Nikki's social media and website. But is there anything I just want to quickly, can you just elaborate on your business real quick? Just how, if somebody wants, because you teach so much, what would that look like for them?
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Appreciate that. So I have a signature program called The Conscious Woman. So I only work with women. So if you're a dude listening to this, I'm sorry, maybe in the future. And in our program, we learn a lot about what we spoke about today, but more about the personal work as opposed to professional. And we do shadow work principles, looking at your belief systems, your subconscious limitations in particular, because it's often what you don't know about yourself that's holding you back. We then go, excuse me, into the neuroscience. So looking at how to create a state of ease within your nervous system and really get out of survival. So learn how to regulate your anxiety, depression, burnout, things like that. We then go into emotions, because emotions are energy in motion. So for those who are wanting to work on your energy, connecting to yourself emotionally, that part's like quite beautiful. We then go into identity work, which as we worked on today, is like really key. If you don't know who you are, then you're going to be looking to the things you do and your achievements to reaffirm that. And then we go into some neuroscience again with a neuroplasticity. We then go into the spirituality of manifestation. So many things. There's so much we do in that space. But a lot of breakthrough models, vulnerability, and helping you to walk towards that edge and have someone to actually hold your hand as you jump and remind you that you have those wings. So I think that's the really beautiful part that working with a mentor offers, is knowing that you don't have to walk to that edge on your own. You can have someone there to hold your hand and maybe push you a little bit, a little bit closer to the edge, but remind you, it's like, girl, you got wings. Let me just show you. Let me help you. So if you're wanting to know more about how you can join that, just reach out to me on Instagram, Nikki Cassa, NIKICASSA, and we can chat more about you, your goals, your dreams, who you are,
All the
and all the beautiful things.
Mhm. And you don't have to be in Australia, right? You do it all over. Perfect.
Correct. You can be anywhere around the world. So I've got clients in New Zealand and the UK. No clients in America yet. So actually I did have one. But
Wow.
yeah.
Could be it in North America. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Nikki, for sharing your time, your energy, your space, and your light with me this morning. I am so grateful to know you and to have you in my life and in this reality. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you and being able to give me a platform to share my voice and my knowledge and my experiences. So I appreciate you, sister. Thank you.
Of course.